4, 3, 2. Mr. Shad is coming on right now. 1. We will be live streaming now. So, Mr. Manning.
All right. I want to call to order the special call board meeting for the Richland 2 Board of Trustees for May the 19th. If I can please have a motion to approve our agenda.
Mr. Manning.
Yes, Dr. Holmes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the special call board meeting for Tuesday, May the 19th.
All right, I have a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Trustees, seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any discussion to approve our agenda?
Mr.
With
Manning.
no discussion. Oh, I'm not logged in.
I'd like to make a motion to
Can we just do a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next.
Mr.
With
Manning.
no discussion. Oh, I'm not logged in.
I'd like to make a motion to
Yes. Can we just do a voice vote? All in favor,
Okay.
say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next. That's all right. So we ready to go, or you need more time? Okay. So with the approval of the agenda, we will now move on to item 3.1. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, and to our community that's watching the special call board meeting. The purpose of this meeting was scheduled for us to give you an update regarding the budget. And so we have Dr. Miley and Ms. Shelley Allen that will provide the information regarding these 2021 budget workshop information. So I will turn it over to Dr. Miley, and we'll stand ready to address any questions after we've shared the information. Dr. Miley.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Good evening, everyone. I hope this will be brief, but we wanted to update everybody because this is such a unique year and a difficult year in terms of our budget, and the budget is so important. And so we wanted to update you where we are and let you know what we think our next steps are. If you go to the second slide, where it starts off the budget process overview, on the left-hand side, you'll see the normal budget process, and I wanted to give a shout out to Shelley Allen for having done all the work on this presentation. She did a great job. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that HWM is House Ways and Means. It is also my initials. So it is House Ways and Means Committee, not Harry W. Miley's committee projection. So the first few times I saw that when I first started working with Shelley, I kept on saying, why is she putting my initials there? It just didn't make sense. But it's House Ways and Means projections. And our normal process is the Ways and Means puts together a budget. It's adopted, goes to the House floor. The House is debated on the House floor, usually by mid-March or so. The Senate Finance gets it. And usually the Senate Finance starts working on their own budget. But then once they get this budget from the House, that's where it officially has to originate in the Ways and Means Committee. The Senate Finance finishes it, and we internally produce a budget that you review and approve in 2 readings. You know, as we know, we start that process in January, February, and it goes through May. And then while we're adopting that, the final state budget projections are finished up. And, the budget counties, that's their request. The county asks us every year to get our projected budget to them by May. We did that the first 3 or 4 or 5 years I was here. The last couple of years, it's gotten more difficult because the state has been so slow in adopting a budget. Last year was an example, and this year, of course, is even the bigger example of how the state has nothing for us, and it's mid-May, and we don't have a budget yet to the county. The county has a 3rd reading of our budget normally. By the 1st of June, we bring that back to the district, and we start a new budget year in July 1. We usually have a new salary schedule implemented in the system with steps and individuals receiving a step increase and any other pay increases in the salary schedules by that time. None of that is relevant this year. This year, the House Ways and Means actually passed a budget in, if I remember, record time. Very little discussion. The House adopted it with very little discussion. But then, of course, everything fell apart with the lockdown and the stay-at-home and the closures. And those projections, if you remember right, included a pay raise for all teachers of $3,000 apiece, step increase, other funding for school districts. All of that is out the window and moot at this point. The state has now adopted a continuing resolution. We brought a continuing resolution for your adoption back in April, on April the 21st, to approve that continuing resolution, which allows us to continue operating in July 1, whatever happens, but at least we can operate with this year's current level of funding. The process has been on hold. We have not received, and we will not receive, any projections from the state by June 30th. We will not be. At one point, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago, and certainly when we were bringing the continuing resolution to you, there was an outside chance that the state legislature might come back and adopt some kind of budget, but that's out of the question now. They are not coming back. They will not approve a budget before June 30th. And they're not scheduled to come back until September the 15th. So we will start July 1 without any state budget. And unfortunately, one of the difficult problems is the county will be setting, the auditor sets the millage prior to we think the state will pass a budget. So we will have the auditor adopting millage rates before we are able to finish our budget based on state revenues. We think it may be October or November before we will finalize a budget for your consideration for the new year. What we know at the state level, we've reviewed some of this. They did pass a continuing resolution just last week. They came back on the 12th. It suspends the step increase until the 2021 state budget is approved. You may have heard some discussion from other districts of whether they would be allowing or giving a step to teachers. It is clear now that the state legislature does not want that to happen. It's frozen the state salary schedule. And it also, which is positive, it delayed the 1% increase in the additional increase in the retirement employer's contribution, which we've experienced over the last several years to try to shore up the retirement system deficits. They've suspended it. I'm sure it'll come back and we'll have it either the next or following year, but it helps us. If there's no new money, that's about a $2.5 million increase in our budget. So it helps take pressure off of that. As I mentioned, the estimates and the budget that the House Ways and Means Committee had passed are no longer a reality. And they are primarily because the revenues that were included in that budget were erased by the Board of Economic Advisors in a meeting about a month or so ago, and then further erased in their meeting last week. They reduced the budget again for FY 2021 by $58 million. And I used to be chairman of that board. I would be very concerned with outlooks right now. You don't know what's going to happen. The longer the virus has impacted the economy, the more difficult it'll be next year. For instance, sales tax declined by almost 26% in last March. We expect the General Assembly to come back in September, approve a budget, hopefully. Until then, we'll be operating under our current FY 19-20 budget. What we know at the local level is that the county auditor had already issued, I guess maybe Shelley may correct me, but probably a month ago or more, which was pretty early for them to release projections, but they released projections to us with an estimated local government revenue portion, both with the millage rate cap allowed by the Act 388 and how much revenue would be there for us with no millage increase. Included in that was about a $1.5 million increase in local tax revenue and about a $1.2 million increase in property tax relief from the state level. Based on that, it's about a 2.6% increase in revenue at the local level at our current millage rate and the current auditor's estimate of mill value. That's what we know at the county level. The next page is basically the summary of what we know today. We know that the property tax revenues are estimated by the auditor to be increased by about $1.5 million for next year. The property tax relief, as I mentioned, the state has already given that to us, about $1.2 million. State revenues are frozen from last year. You do see an $804,000 increase over our FY 19-20 budget. That is because the state actually had increased our revenues for last year, or currently this current year. But we hadn't changed our budget. So they haven't increased the revenues over our 19-20 budget. It's just that the revenues from our 19-20 budget were actually increased by the state, and we did not amend our budget. So given that, we've got about right this minute about $3.4 million of potential revenues above our current funding level of FY 19-20. The next page just shows you the funding sources. The state allocation. So you see here at the very top of that, the revenue generated by the local millage. And I just got a note that my internet connection is unstable, so somebody holler if I get disconnected. So we get about 36% of our revenues from local property taxes, 63% or so from the state, and a little bit over 1% from other sources. And kind of what's next? What we want to do is, given the county's process is ahead of the state's process, we will not have a finalized budget before the county has a deadline of publishing and adopting all millage rates. And so what we want to do is to ensure that the district receives all our tax revenue that will be generated from the current millage rate. We want to communicate to the county, in essence, write a letter to the county saying we agree with the auditor's estimate and we would request those local funds based on a 0 mill increase. We've discussed internally about a mill increase. Shelley Allen and I have discussed it with Dr. Davis. We think that this is hard times and we might normally want to increase the millage, but given everything else in the world, given the level of unemployment, given the hardship that our community is going through, we feel like that we'll ask for, we're recommending no mill increase this year, no tax increase. We figure that we will figure out how to fund the district's needs with that. And Shelley, I'm sure I left out something. What did I leave out? Or correct me if I misstated something.
I think you covered it pretty well, unless there are questions.
Board members, questions or comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Agostini.
Thank you, Dr. Miley and Ms. Allen for the presentation and the information. Just based upon this information, can our employees be assured that we will not be furloughing, that everybody will be coming back next year? That seems to be in the media and a concern. Where do we stand with that?
Harry looks like he's frozen again.
Oh.
I can answer that
You would.
question.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've had some conversations regarding that. even today. I had a phone call we had a Zoom this morning. Shelley and I, along with Dr. Miley, jumped in, and I asked that question: are we in a position where we can, where we're not concerned about riffing employees? And so going into the FY 2021 budget, we're not looking to have to cut any positions of currently employed employees in our school district. We may have to do some other things in preparation for the 21-22 budget. And so it's going to be prudent upon us to be very conservative in some of the things that we do as we prepare for the 21-22 budget. But for 2021, we look like we're in pretty good shape, and that's being in really good fiscal standings prior to that. Has kind of positioned us to be able to do that. I know that's been a talk around the district, around the state, and around the district, but right now we're looking pretty good that's not going to have an impact on us.
Okay, and I have just a follow-up question based upon what you said, Dr. Davis. So if I'm hearing correctly, no current positions or people that are currently employed, but what if, for example, we have teachers leaving? Would they be replaced? Is that the plan, or is that a wait and see?
That's the plan, because that position is already in the current budget.
Okay.
But, we also have growth positions. So we have to take a look at, as far as growth positions are concerned. But a lot of that's dependent upon what some of the decisions are made on how we return back to school. If we return back to school a certain way and we have to stagger start times and we may need additional employees, and we may have to make some additional decisions on how we're going to best do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether I was cut off or because of the internet connection. Not cut off, but I mean, I don't know whether I lost the internet connection or not, but I just got back on and Dr. Davis may have mentioned this, and we discussed it earlier today or yesterday, that I think 21-22 may be the more difficult year, given that we had a $1.9 billion surplus 4 months ago. I feel like 2021 ought to be okay.
At the state level, just to clarify, that was at the state level, just to clarify.
Yeah.
For the record.
For the record.
Yeah.
So that's my thinking, is that 2021, I think, will be fine. We may not have a lot of growth positions. We hopefully we'll have some needed because we were growing in students, but I feel like 21-22 may really be a difficult year. If this thing goes, another 6-12 months where we're still not opening things and et cetera. And like Dr. Davis said, if the impact on how we open will have, how we open and operate will have an impact. So I hope that helped, and I'm sorry I didn't ask any other questions with my.
All right. Other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Dr. Holmes.
not a question, but just thank you, both of you all, for that report. We really appreciate your hard work with that.
Well, as Mr. Manning reminds everybody, we know who does all the work. And so I appreciate Shelley being on the team, and so I appreciate that.
Welcome.
That's right. Harry, you've been around long enough. You're starting to get it. Just kidding. Other questions or comments?
Well, thank y'all.
If there's no other questions or comments, if I can have a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Mackey.
I move to adjourn the May 19th, 2020 special call board meeting of the Richland 2 School Board of Trustees.
Ms. Mackey's made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, if we can all do a voice vote in favor. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Y'all have a great evening. Thank you.
You too. Good night.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.